Investing internationally seems exciting, but most investors think it's too risky, too complicated, or just out of reach. The secret to success is not just strategy, it's actually the key connections you have to make, but no one is talking about this.
In today's episode, we have Tameka Bryant. She's a real estate investor who has grown her portfolio internationally. She's going to share with us what key connections she has made beyond local realtors that allow her to grow her portfolio overseas and now being able to develop an entire hotel.
Welcome to the InvestHER Podcast. I'm Liz Faircloth.
And I am your co-host, Andressa Gadelli. When it comes down to investing internationally, this might seem such a far, far away dream for a lot of investors. But we want to break it down and make it accessible and provide all of you that are listening with the steps that you should consider when investing internationally. So Tameka, first of all, when somebody's thinking about investing internationally, what are the top factors they should take in consideration to select the right place?
I always tell people to start with, where do they enjoy vacationing? Once you know that you love a particular place, then it makes it really, really easy to go do the research there. It's like, oh, I love this beach, then let me look at the opportunities, because if I love it, then other people are going to love it as well. So that's normally the first thing that I do is I check out the scenery, check out the location. Then I go see about the pricing in the market. That's a huge one. And I just say the third one is you have to check out who the other people who are investing in that market are and what they're investing in. Because, when you go overseas, it's huge, so it's a vast community of different options. So you have everything from single family to hotels to businesses. So I like to kind of focus on where are other people like me investing in, and I start there first.
And Tameka, you had an interesting journey of how you ended up investing in the DR, right? So walk us through that a little bit of how, because you've been a real estate agent for 30 years, an investor, and then you decided to pivot and pivot there. So I'd love to hear your journey so we can understand what decisions you made and how you ended up there, and then we can go from there.
I came in the real estate market as an investor, started investing in New York, couldn't afford things there. So I did one of the crazy things is purchase a property sight unseen in New Mexico as my first investment property. I used the money from the wedding to do that. Long story. But after, working as an instructor and a trainer for the National Association of Realtors, I was meeting a lot of real estate professionals like us who were not investing, but kind of working in different markets, wanted to invest, and kind of said, oh, I've been here investing, or I've been a real estate agent for 10 years, and I kept saying I want to invest and never got started. And so one of those agents called me up one day and said, hey, I know you invest. There's an opportunity in the Dominican Republic that you might want to go check out. It's about $50,000. It says that they're starting. And I went right there. The minute she said it, I got a call. I called over to the DR, went over, did my own research, and then I brought some friends. That's how I got started in that particular market. And that was right after COVID.
Oh, wow. So let's break that down, right? Because for all the people that are listening, it's like, oh my gosh, what? You got on the airplane next day and went there? So what made you got into an airplane and go there? What are the due diligence that you did in advance that gave you the green light to go there?
The thing was that I actually knew enough about travel, so it wasn't foreign to me to kind of go on vacation or anything like that. So the first thing I did is I researched as much as I could on the project. I did as much research I could as investing in that market. And so there's a lot of material. What people don't realize is that there's already more than 9 million of US citizens living abroad now. And so there's a lot of information that was already there. So the next thing I did is actually called up the US Embassy that was in the Dominican Republic and asked for resources for attorneys and things like that. And so I was doing some, necessary footwork on the ground here in the States before I went. So it wasn't that I just jumped on the plane.
It's like,
It
let's
felt
go.
like,
I have no idea.
yeah.
Where is it? I don't know. Doesn't
Well,
I don't.
I'm one of
Worst
those
case
people.
scenario, I'm going to be at the beach. So
I like your
don't-
risk taking, though. I like it. I like it.
That's right.
Let's break it down. What type of project was it? And did you ended up buying it?
Yes. So it was the first project that I looked at was a condo. I'm familiar with condos. I already invest in condos in the States. So it wasn't foreign for me to kind of move right into a condo. So yes, I purchased a condo. In fact, I purchased 3. I purchased one, came back, told friends, then went back with my husband, purchased another, and then purchased one with a group. And I found that purchasing with the group made a whole lot of sense for a lot of people who were kind of afraid to kind of go on their own. And, so we just started doing group purchases. And that's how we got started.
So walk us through, you bought one condo, then you ended up buying a few condos. What about that first condo that said to you, I want to buy more here? And I know there's some pieces of the community, right, that started to become really helpful to you that you're like, okay, this is something I want to do more of. What were some of those specific elements of what you were experiencing to make you want to do more?
So there's a couple of things that happens when you are purchasing with new development projects. And these are all new developments that we purchased in. One, what was attractive is whenever you're one of the first to go in any community, you expect that by the time it's finished, the values will have increased. So I knew right there, I wanted to be one of the first investors in this particular project. That was one. Number 2, the payment plan options were by far better than most of the options that I could find anywhere else, especially in the States. Because with new construction, you're able to put down a small percentage. So in this case, I think it was like $2,000 to $3,000 down. And then you're able to make payments every quarter, every month, depending on how you negotiate it, until your project is close to being finished. And then you're paying your final 10 or 20% when they give you keys. So payment options or owner financing is very attractive to me because I can budget that as an investment. And it also means at the end of that, payment, I don't have a mortgage. And so that made it a very viable option for a lot of investors. And most of my investors are real estate professionals. So what made it the next thing that made it so attractive to not just me, but other real estate agents is that when you work with the developers on those payment plan options, you as a real estate professional actually get compensated on the front. You don't have to wait until a deal is closed to get a commission.
I have a lot of questions. My first one is, how can we avoid being scammed, right? That goes in my head because I come from Brazil and we have plenty of cases where developers have promised A, B, C and never delivered, right? So what are the due diligence process? Tell me about the due diligence process. How were you able to evaluate a developer and making sure that even with your deposit and your payment plan, that was not going to be your case?
Right. So, and I tell you guys, it is not easy. And which is why I tell people, don't just jump out there and kind of go. We were scammed when we first started going into Mexico and other places, because you don't know. You have to do your due diligence. And so the very first thing after working with, and that's why I started also working with the Minister of Tourism, is finding not just one developer, looking at several developers, asking for their track record, going in and seeing what they've built before, finding out who's insuring them, what attorneys are working with them. So one thing that was easy for us after we got in is once we found the embassy has a list of attorneys that they tell you should work with. And so we went to two of those attorneys. There were three on the list. Two of the three attorneys I actually hired. And those two attorneys said, hey, here are the developers who are building. Here are the developers who are doing good business. Here are the developers who are working with our lenders, that kind of thing. And then that's for me, the best way. And so since then, that's, I really started working with more real estate agents and helping them enter into other markets using that same, system. So we're now in 10 markets.
How different it is buying internationally compared to the US. I know that in Brazil, there's no such a thing as an MLS. And I was very surprised about how people buy there. Many people talk directly with the buyer. The realtor is there, but isn't there. It's confusing to me. And I didn't make a lot of sense in terms of the process itself. It seemed a little bit behind. Not shaming you Brazilians if you're listening to it. Love you guys, but the process itself did not make too much sense for me. How is the buying process in the countries that you are currently buying?
They're split. So you very much do have a lot of countries like Brazil, like Dominican Republic, that don't have a system in place for showing houses. There's no MLS. There's no realtor association or real estate association that's governing. There's no code of ethics.
Yeah.
It's
wild.
Really like wild. So, yeah. So what we
Did they use Facebook too to show houses? Instagram?
They use
WhatsApp?
Exactly. They're sending stuff through WhatsApp. Let me tell you, I have my bankers are using WhatsApp. It was the weirdest thing. I was like, wait a minute, is this a scam? My banker? I walked to the bank one day from my apartment to ask my banker, is this you using WhatsApp? So yeah, it's a totally different mind shift of how you have to work, so for us, it was really getting on the ground. I had to meet people. I have an apartment. I've had two different apartments on two parts of the different spaces. Like I get in and get grounded in the space personally. So I have a real estate office in two of the locations we're in with a staff. So me personally, I knew with me having so many investors, I needed to have, let's say, a Dominican owned company run to protect my U.S. investors because we do business differently. Like we want things done a certain way and on a different time. And that's Caribbean time there.
Right.
Yes.
So, Tameka, I'd love to dive into the numbers, right? So like anything, whether you're buying internationally, you're buying locally, it's about the out sale or the rent that you can get for the property, and then what strategy you're going to deploy. I would imagine you're doing like a some sort of short-term Airbnb sort of approach for this condo. Or was that the plan in terms of the goal or like the business plan, if you will, that people are going to rent this out short-term as like a vacation, usage? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So we had about 70 to 75% of our investors were using them for short-term rentals. Most of them who were coming out of like the Atlanta market, because of the restrictions in Atlanta that you can't have more than 2 condo or Airbnbs, they were looking at what other options they had to build their portfolios. And so, yeah, about 70 to 75% were using them for Airbnb.
So then my question goes to, it is all about regulation, right? And what I know of so many different countries, and again, this is my own knowledge, right? Could be completely wrong. But in terms of regulations are a little looser. They're not quite as stringent as some of our even areas. So walk me through that kind of due diligence or that process of, okay, all right, the condo is $50K. This is what we can, we're going to actually gain in terms of, 10 rentals, a month, 5, whatever the numbers are. But in terms of regulations, how did you navigate that? And were there any regulations in that area? And if they weren't, how did you then kind of have that kind of confidence to say, you know what, I'm buying it for X, we can get Y, just want to get your thoughts around all that.
So the good thing about finding the other developers who are in the area as well, that if there is a developer who doesn't have previous experience, we can go to the developers who've been around longer, because a lot of them will have investment, information in their, materials as well. So they can break down and say, hey, over the course of the last 10 years, this is kind of what we've done. We are able to get $150 per night, $110 per night. So again, with a place like Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, it's the number one vacation place. So everyone has numbers, right? So we were able to piggyback and look at those numbers as well. Even if a new developer didn't have them, we tend to be able to say, hey, this developer over here has the numbers. They've been in business for a while and they are sharing the information. So that was the good thing. Once you get in with one developer, you can meet the other developers. And again, I'm on the ground with people, and my team is a mix of people who live in that country and the team that I brought with me.
You mentioned that you've been scammed, right? And we love horror stories. We don't. People are listening to, right, Liz?
Well, you have to show the good and the bad.
100%.
To mitigate risk, right? The name of the game.
Do you think that you guys just gonna go to the beach and enjoy your pina colada?
You get scammed in the States too. So goodness, yeah.
So what you wish that everybody that is thinking about investing internationally, what are like the top 3 things that you know now that you didn't know when you got started investing internationally?
Well, the one thing that I did not know is how slow their court system is, because I'm working with the top attorney's offices, but I had no clue on how slow it was. Another thing was, it's not as easy to research the land and title as it is in the States. Like we're used to, we can throw something in and call a title company and get things. I didn't realize when I first got going how slow that process would be when you're doing it the correct way. And when you are like us, who are always ready to go, that patience, and it's like, hey, we need to check the title. That may take a couple of months. Don't be so quick to kind of jump in on a resale, and don't give the attorney an opportunity to really go and look for, the clearing of this title and making sure it's clear. Because they have to go into 2 offices. There's not a computer system that they're just going to do from their desk. They have to physically go into 2 different offices to make sure that title is clear.
I think it's any other strategy, right? There's the pros and the cons and the benefits of doing it. And for all of you that are listening, you might be thinking, I don't have that patience, or I can't. My risk tolerance when it comes down to having a clear process, I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't know a lot of pieces of the puzzle. I don't know. And I want to highlight, and those are all valid, right? But I want to highlight the benefits on really going through the learning curve. What have you got as results of investing internationally that you feel that is beneficial compared to investing nationally?
Well, I will tell you that my, properties, they aren't, they are hardly ever vacant. So, and I'm also seeing not only the returns coming from the increase on value. And I tell people, one of the biggest things for me is having a piece of peace. Like I have a peace of mind when I go to my properties, or when I'm there, when you can be in 80-degree weather in January and not sitting in the middle of a snowstorm. So I can stay there for 2 months and work, from there. So it's the being able to utilize the property as well. Another key thing for me is how many people I'm actually helping. There are a lot of investors who are buying or investing into these properties to pay for bills for their parents, or their parents' care and things like that. And when they're shut out of being able to invest in their local markets, that is an opportunity for them to do that. So it's a huge thing for me that I'm able to help so many people move into those spaces. And you'll be surprised that it's not only just the people in the US I'm helping. I'm finding people who are coming from Puerto Rico into other markets because they can't afford to stay in their own country, with those values and things like that. So it's more than just a value game. It's the quality of life. The medical facilities are, less expensive. Just all of those kind of things. It's the food, the culture. There's so many pluses for me. And, my group of what we do, like I tell people, we do girls trips differently now. And when we start, as we age, we want more, experiences, more lifestyle enhancements, not just the hustle and bustle of having, 50 single family homes.
It's not about numbers, right? Not about quantity, it's quality. I'm curious a little bit to understand the banking and the financing.
Mm-hmm.
That's always a question mark in my head. And it's probably because I just don't know, right? And people listening it's a barrier to entry. So how did you navigate that when you're in another country, especially from a financing perspective? How did that unfold, especially this first if you want to use the first condo as an example? It'd be great to understand that a little bit. And how did you mitigate that moving forward?
Well, the first thing with the condo, those were new construction, the first ones we went into. So we didn't need the bank because we chose to do the owner finance option. Okay. Now there are one of the first two things that we did when we go on tour, because we do, as I call them, guided tours for investors so that they can kind of come in. We take them to meet with attorneys. We take them to the banking institution, all of those kind of things so that they get an idea of how that works. So in certain areas, like the lending side, they will sit down and show you what it looks like. It looks very similar to ours. They're going to look at your credit, all of those kind of things. The difference is they won't give as much of a high loan to value to the property. So you may only be able to get approved for 50% because you are a risk to that country. Now, one thing that in one of the countries we found that was interesting is that they required that we had a life insurance that on ourselves that was equal to the property's value.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was kind of like, what? But once they explained it, it made sense because, again, we're not living there full time. If something happens to the property, how do they get their money back? They just have a different way of, securing their investment in that property. So each particular market is just a little different.
I want to transition to the development that you're doing right now, the resort, right? And when it comes down to construction, it doesn't matter where it is in the U.S. or outside. It seems that there is a commonality in terms of how long things take and how many times things need to be redone. How were you able to put together a team to make this resort project happen and mitigate the risk, specifically with the construction piece?
With me, it's been 5 years now. I happened to meet one of the minister of tourisms in the Dominican Republic. And so for those who don't know, when you are working with the tourism group, they have access to everything. They're the ones who are making sure developers and the country are bringing new business in. So they have a database of all the good architects. They have a database of all the good construction firms. They know who's doing what. So my way of working through that is I just work with the office. So one of the great things that they did this last year is that the tourism group teamed up with two of the banks and said, let's create funding opportunities for new developers. And so that's one of the programs that I work with, is because not only do we apply for Confantor, which is no taxes to our end users. So let's say you're buying a condo in our development, you won't pay taxes up to $160,000 on that project. And then we don't pay taxes on certain things and imports as a developer. And so those kind of programs are in place to help developers who are doing good business do more good business, because again, they rely on tourism for their country to grow. So they've just made it that much easier for new developers to come in. And that's kind of how I got tied in to, which contractors I'm going to use, who I'm going to use, which insurance companies, all of those kind of things. When you're working with the staff of the tourism group who've been around 20 plus years, they know everyone on the island.
Yeah. How big is this development going to be? How big is the development?
This is an 80-room hotel with 20 residences. When I was doing the research, I've been working with the hotel chains over the last couple of years. The hotel chains have a huge push to have more women as hotel owners. And so a lot of the hotels were saying, hey, look at the residences. We really want residences. So I got 3 offers to have residences as a part of my hotel development. So even though that was already on my mind, it was just the feather in the cap that told me I was going in the right direction on this land, because I held out because I wanted beachfront property and I didn't want it in Punta Cana. I wanted it in what was going to be the next big place in Dominican Republic. And that's why I worked with the tourism, team, because they, of course, would know where's the next upcoming place in the Dominican Republic going to be.
And where is it?
It is in Semina.
Never heard.
Yeah.
So booking a trip, right, Andressa?
Well, I'm literally in the process right now. Literally, I can show you guys my email. I forget about the travel agent that is not replying to my email. I'm not going to Punta Cana anymore. I'm going to where? Going to Semina. Okay,
Semina.
Forget about.
And
Punta
if you
Cana.
do go to Punta Cana, it's a day trip. You just tell them you're going where the whales are, whale watching.
I'm telling you, I am going. I'm going to text you. I swear. So why is that the next place? Tell us.
For years and years, it has been the place for the very affluent, but it wasn't a place where you're going to go and kind of party. It was where the very affluent Dominicans went to. Europeans would come and do a lot of nature tours and things like that. The beaches are pristine. If you do a Google search, you'll see like, oh my goodness. And so what has happened in the last couple of years, and I can share this here, is that a major star and the owners of Cap Cana purchased a lot of the land in that area. And so we all now know that that's where the next major resorts are going to be. So I just wanted to carve out my little piece on the beach. And there's private beaches, so you really go there and really relax and recharge. That's what that area of, the island is about. It's on the north side of the island.
And where is your project is right now? You're in midst of construction. You already have a couple of rooms, because I'm going to book one of them.
No,
she's looking into it right now.
I'll stay in the model one.
There you go.
No, what happened with me is that the land I purchased or was looking for was owned by a renowned architect and his partners. And so they decided they were going to break up. So I actually purchased a portion of theirs. I didn't want as many of the acres as they had. And so now my attorney is one of the island's best attorneys. She's making all of the due diligence pieces happen on the front end, even down to the name change. A name change takes some time. So we're still in that process, even though, the hotel and chains and everybody else are like, when are we going? I'm like, my attorney, she will not move until every T is crossed and I is dotted. so that I also don't have any problems getting my conference application complete. So we haven't broken ground or anything just yet. It's still in the clearance of name, title, all of those changes.
I want to highlight something, Tameka, because what you just described literally to everyone here on this podcast was a recipe for success in the perspective that you started with a condo. You did your due diligence to purchase one condo that led to 3 condos. Then you're starting to get more, connected to the community, the team, the embassy, the attorneys, the fill in the blank. And now you are in the community and really in the know-how and had this opportunity, right, unfold. And I think that literally, if you take any investor in any community, whether it's nationally or internationally, it's a very, very common sort of story. And so what I want to say to everyone listening is start with a single. It's not a home run. She didn't start with the 80-room hotel, right? And so we often want that versus, you know what? Let me do my due diligence on this one project because it's going to lead to something bigger. So that's just a really key piece I wanted to mention. But Tameka, this has been great. Where can everyone listening learn more about you and follow you on your journey?
I am at, it's probably easier to get me at be-niche.com. That's one of my websites that'll lead to everything else if they find me. But that's the easiest one, be-niche.com.
Tameka, thank you so much for coming to our podcast. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.